My meditation on chapter 39 of the Tao Te Ching has opened for me new levels of understanding of the words and deeds of Jesus Christ. We all know these words and stories by heart, so much so that their meaning has been neutralized. But Lao Tzu's teachings give us a bright new dimension of what was in the mind of Christ when he thus spoke. In chapter 39 of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu teaches, "The noble has the base as its root. The high has the low for its foundation." Jesus understood that only the meek and humble who embrace the base, which is the One or the Tao, can reach to the heights. He not only taught this, but he exemplified it in his own life over and over again. It is amazing how many passages I have found that are pure Taoist in their statement, right out of the four Gospels. Jesus preached, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me. For I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, my burden is light." Jesus obviously had a deeper interpretation of meek and lowly than we have had. He saw the meek and lowly being almost as it were an extreme yin, so that the extreme yang could enter into it. By affirming his meekness and lowliness, he could therefore be in polarity with the great Tao, the supreme power and wisdom and love of God. So hardly in the human sense of the word, but yes in the human sense of the word, because this was indeed his demeanor. He did allow himself to be put upon. He answered the Father's call to enter life to bear the sins of the world. One must be meek and lowly to allow oneself to be ridiculed, to be crucified, and to become the burden bearer, the servant of all. And yet through all of this, Jesus is teaching us that this is the lesson not only of Christian virtue, but of the science of equilibrium, of the law of nature. If you walk as I am and do as I am, you will receive power from on high. And this is exactly what he promised his disciples. "Tarry ye in the city of Jerusalem until ye receive power from on high." If they had truly got the message, if they truly got the sense of the Tao and of cosmic forces at play within him, they would follow him, they would be obedient to him, they would love, they would not seek to be great. And therefore, in that likeness to their master, they would receive that same power of which he said, "My burden is light." Because lowliness is the base and the root of my being, therefore I can contain the great Tao. I am the chalice emptied, which the Tao may enter. More recent versions of the Bible translate meek and lowly in heart, which is from the King James Version, as gentle and humble in heart. In the Old Testament, Moses is described as very meek, more than all men that were on the face of the earth. E.J. Cook writes that in the Old Testament, the word meekness was used to express the attitude of the truly religious person, as opposed to the rich and arrogant, who, relying upon themselves or upon secular alliances, were defiant toward God and oppressive toward those weaker than themselves. Meekness is the opposite of pride. Meekness, therefore, in the Old Testament is used to describe primarily the proper attitude of complete dependence upon God. That is the definition of a disciple of Jesus Christ or Gautama Buddha or Lao Tzu or Zarathustra or Lord Krishna. Complete and utter dependence upon God. W.E. Vine explains, it must be clearly understood that the meekness manifested by the Lord and commended to the believer is the fruit of power. The common assumption is that when a man is meek, it is because he cannot help himself. But the Lord was meek because he had the infinite resources of God at his command. He had no need to proclaim himself. Described negatively, meekness is the opposite of self-assertiveness and self-interest. It is equanimity of spirit, that equilibrium of spirit, that is neither elated nor cast down, simply because it is not occupied with self at all. It is not occupied with self at all. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." To me, the poor in spirit are the wise ones who recognize that they are spiritually impoverished and therefore seek the kingdom of heaven and find it. Jesus said, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." This means the meek are those who desire not the things of this world, and therefore they inherit the earth for their very detachment. They choose to embody virtue as the natural manifestation of the One, who is the child of the Tao, the only begotten Son of God. Their virtue becomes the lodestone whereby they do inherit the earth. Bible commentators say the poor in spirit are those who not only may be in a state of material poverty, but may also be despised and oppressed. They are afflicted in spirit, and they acknowledge their spiritual need. This is to come to the feet of Christ or Buddha or Krishna or Lao Tzu. To acknowledge the spiritual need. This is the foundation of the path of self-mastery. Matthew Henry, who was a 17th century Bible commentator, says, "Poor in spirit means to be humble and lowly in our own eyes. To be poor in spirit is to think meanly of ourselves, of what we are and have and do. It is to be as little children in our opinion of ourselves. It is to be willing to make ourselves cheap, which means of inferior quality or worth, and mean, which means humble, and little. To do good, to become all things to all men. It is to acknowledge that God is great and we are mean, that He is all and we are nothing. To me, the meek and lowly and the poor in spirit are like the noblemen who call themselves orphaned, widowed, and unworthy. Lao Tzu said, "Barons and kings call themselves orphaned, widowed, and unworthy. Is this not taking the humble for one's root? One's root determines what the great tree of life will be." In their considering themselves mean, that is lowly, the princes and kings see the foundation of their dignity. To be meek and lowly and poor in spirit means that you are empty, that you confess your emptiness and your inability to fill yourself. It is like the realization that it is impossible to pull oneself up by one's own bootstraps. Thus you confess your utter dependency on God, that He and He alone can fill you. More than anything else in the whole world, you want to be filled with the Spirit of the living God. the spirit of the living Tao. And you acknowledge that without that spirit, without that Tao, you are unfulfilled, and of all people most miserably poor. As Mary, the mother of Jesus, sang in her Magnificat, he hath filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he hath sent empty away. In fact, this praise unto God my Savior is Mary's complete statement of the law of the great Tao. If you are not poor and meek and lowly, what are you? You are rich and proud, rich with the things and the concerns of this world, and proud of your accomplishments and your possessions. Your life is so rich with the activities and the accoutrements of this world that you cannot stop to think about God or to want God, for you are surfeited in your wants. You have no longing for God. You cannot recognize your soul's desire for God or God's desire for you. When you are proud and boastful and not humble and meek, you leave no room for God to enter in and work his works through you. Therefore Mary sang, "The rich he hath sent empty away," for their richness was not an enlightened richness of the Spirit. Thus their emptiness was not an enlightened emptiness of the Spirit. And they went away as they came, void of the Spirit. When Jesus' disciples asked him, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" he brought a little child into their midst and said, "Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter in to the kingdom of heaven," the consciousness of heaven. Only the little child understands the consciousness of heaven, because he is of that consciousness. It is not separate from him. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Lao Tzu said, "Humble station is the basis of honor. The low is the foundation of the high. For this reason, kings and barons call themselves children without parents, lonely people without spouses, and men without food to eat. Is this not regarding humble station as the basis of honor?" Jesus also taught the lesson of humility in his parable of the ambitious guest. The scene is the house of one of the chief Pharisees, where Jesus was invited to eat bread on the Sabbath day. Luke records that Jesus told the guests a parable because he had noticed how they picked the places of honor. He said, "When thou art bidden of any man to a wedding, sit not down in the highest room, lest a more honorable man than thou be bidden of him, and he that bade thee and him come and say to thee, Give this man place, and thou begin with shame to take the lowest room. But when thou art bidden, go and sit in the lowest room, that when he that bade thee cometh, he may say unto thee, Friend, go up higher. Then shalt thou have worship in the presence of them that sit at meat with thee. For whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted." Lao Tzu taught, "The noble has the base as its root. The high has the low for its foundation. The most famous has no fame." The Apostle Paul wrote that Jesus made himself of no reputation and took upon himself the form of a servant. The Lord did not seek worldly reputation or worldly power or worldly honor. Matthew records that when Jesus healed the multitudes who followed him on the Sabbath day, he charged them that they should not make him known. Jesus told the man he healed of leprosy, "See thou tell no man." And after Peter told Jesus that he was the Christ, the Son of the living God, Jesus instructed his disciples that they should tell no man that he was Jesus Christ. Lao Tzu said, "Princes and kings do not wish to show themselves elegant-looking as jade, but prefer to be coarse-looking as an ordinary stone." No, Jesus did not proclaim himself a king or a leader of the people. He proclaimed himself a servant. At the Last Supper, Jesus tenderly told his disciples, "I am among you as he that serveth." After he had washed the disciples' feet, Jesus said, "If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that ye should do as I have done to you. Verily, verily, I say unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord, neither he that is sent greater than he that sent him." The manifestation of the Tao is not greater than the Tao, neither is he that is sent from the Tao greater than the Tao that sent him. Lao Tzu said, "Humble station is the basis of honor. The low is the foundation of the high." Jesus taught, "Whosoever will be great among you, let him become your minister. And whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, and to give his life a ransom for many." How could Jesus' life be a ransom for many? Consider, he merged with a great Tao. Therefore his body was a limitless resource of light and energy. Therefore he could pay the ransom for the karma of many. This was his mission, and he did not shirk from it. Lao Tzu said, "It must be the case that the noble has the base as its root. It must be the case that the high has the low for its foundation." Living one's life as a ministering servant is the byword of the Bodhisattva. In Buddhism, a Bodhisattva is a Buddha to be. We are all Buddhas to be because we all have the seed of the Buddha within us. When we elect to become a Bodhisattva, we begin a path of discipleship toward Buddhahood. He is a disciple who has foregone the attainment of nirvana with a vow to first save all children of God. A Bodhisattva truly lays down his life for his friends, as Jesus did and told us to do. Jesus was a Bodhisattva. The 7th century Buddhist monk Shantideva wrote of this path in his famous Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. He said, "By the virtue collected through all that I have done, may the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be like a healing drug unto the sick. May I be the physician for them and also tend them till they are whole again. May I be an inexhaustible treasure for poor creatures. May I be foremost in rendering service to them with manifold and various articles and requisites. I have devoted the body to the welfare of all creatures. They may revile me all the time or bespatter me with mud. They may make sport of me, yea, they may even slay me. I have given my body to them. I have given my body of light. I have given the body of the Tao. I am the Tao. I and the Tao are one. Those persons who revile me, or do me harm, or scoff at me, may they all attain enlightenment. It is indeed enlightened self-interest for you to call for the enlightenment of your enemies, because once they are enlightened, they will no longer be your enemies, presumably. Shantideva builds on his theme. May I be the protector of the helpless. May I be the guide of wayfarers. May I be a lamp unto all who need a lamp. May I be a bed for all who lack a bed. May I be a slave to all who want a slave. Paul and James repeatedly exhort the Christians to emulate Jesus' example, to become meek and lowly as they serve others. Paul wrote to the Galatians, "By love, serve one another." Here is the great test. We make up our minds to serve, but then we have to deal with the psychology of anger. That's why the scriptures say, be a cheerful giver. So by love we must serve, and if we do not have love, let us stop serving until we purge ourselves by love's fires. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. The fruits of the Spirit are always self-effacing, because those who have them put others first and themselves last. Paul said, "Let us not be desirous of vainglory, provoking one another, envying one another, daring someone to accomplish this or to accomplish that." That is provoking, envying another's accomplishments. As Lao Tzu advised, do not tinkle like jade or chime like stones. The most famous has no fame. In his letter to the Colossians, Paul admonished, there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision or uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond nor free, but Christ is all and in all. The one that is born of the Tao, that only begotten Son, is in all and is all. Put on, therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, bowels of mercies, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long-suffering, forbearing one another, and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. And above all these things, put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness. If the Tao is perfectness and perfection, then the bond of it, bonding us to it and it to us, is charity itself. Charity, as opposed to the word love, is love in action, love in giving of oneself. Giving of oneself to others who have less than we have is a form of equalization. It is a form of becoming lowly and meek, reducing all of us to the base, to the common denominator of the equilibrium of the yin and the yang. By giving a portion of ourselves away, we make another be able to become one with the Tao. James wrote, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. Submit yourselves therefore to God. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. Lao Tzu said, the high has the low for its foundation. Thus for this reason marquises and kings call themselves the orphan, the widower, the one without grain. This is taking the base as one's root, is it not? Therefore they regard their large numbers of carriages as having no carriage, and because of this they desire not to dazzle and glitter like jade, but to remain firm and strong like stone. Jesus' life and mission is the story of his effacing the lesser self so that the full power of the Spirit of God, the great Tao, could descend into his temple. By example, Jesus was also teaching us to efface our lesser self, to make room for the great Tao. He told the Jews who persecuted him and sought to slay him after he had healed a man on the Sabbath day, "If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. The Father himself, which hath sent me, hath borne witness of me. I receive not honor from men. I am come in my Father's name, and ye receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him ye will receive. How can ye believe, which receive honor one of another, and seek not the honor that cometh only from God?" On another occasion, he told his challengers, "If I honor myself, my honor is nothing. It is my Father that honoreth me." This is like the teaching of the 15th century Hindu mystic, Sri Chaitanya. "Be humble as a blade of grass, be patient and forbearing as a tree. Give honor to all, take no honor for thyself, and chant the name of the Lord unceasingly." Sanat Sujatya, the Hindu text, teaches, "The wise man should not seek the company of those who worship him. He should shun all honor like poison. He should welcome all humiliation from the public like nectar." Yoga, the path to union with God, is harmed by honors, and one who suffers humiliation attains perfection in yoga. Lao Tzu wrote, "Princes and kings call themselves orphans, men of small virtue, and as carriages without a nave. Is not this an acknowledgement that in their considering themselves mean, that is lowly, they see the foundation of their dignity?" At the Last Supper, Jesus told the disciples that his oneness with the Father was what enabled him to fulfill his mission. In the New Testament, the appellation Father applies equally to our Father who art in heaven and our Guru who art with us. Jesus acknowledged the Tao as both heavenly Father and earthly Guru. He said, "Believest thou not that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me, or else believe me for the very work's sake." Jesus was saying, "The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of my lesser self, but the Tao that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. Believe me that I am in the Tao and the Tao in me, or else believe me for the very work's sake, for the very sake of the De of the Tao Te Ching. Remember, the De is inner potency, or the power of the Tao that is activated in man as natural and unpretentious virtue. When I am in the Tao, I am the Tao." This is my meditation upon this teaching. When I am in the Tao, I am the Tao. As the fish that is suspended in the great ocean is one with the ocean, and as the bird that is suspended in the sky is one with the sky. But when the Tao is in me, then I am the De. For when the Tao is in me, then I am the inner potency of the Tao. And this potency is the De, or virtue. And embodied virtue is the activation of the Tao. I think of this in one sense, in Hindu terms. I compare the Tao to Shiva and the De to Shakti. But this comparison is wanting in the ultimate symmetry of Taoist thought. I give it to you because we can understand that the Tao that we perceive in action is the De, the outpicturing of the virtue. As Lao Tzu taught, the Tao is the foundation of everything in the universe. Without the great Tao, nothing can realize its true nature. The great Tao, as we learned in the very beginning of this course, is a fecund womb out of which all things are born, from which all things are nourished. Without coming forth from the great womb and returning to the great womb, we cannot realize our true nature. When it realizes its true nature, it becomes the Tao in action by virtue of the De. Lao Tzu said, of those in the past that attained the One, heaven by attaining the One became clear, earth by attaining the One became stable, gods by attaining the One became divine, valleys by attaining the One became full. Jesus affirmed, my Father worketh hitherto, and I work. The Son can do nothing of himself but what he seeth the Father do. I can of mine own self do nothing. I seek not mine own will, but the will of the Father which has sent me. Jesus was saying, I can of my lesser self do nothing. Without the greater self, the Tao, I can do nothing. I can do nothing without the Tao. Jesus said, without me, and when he said the me, he meant the Tao. Without me, ye can do nothing. He meant the one born of the Tao, that only begotten Son. Without that presence in us, as it was in Jesus, we can do nothing. That is, nothing of lasting value or enduring worth. These statements are pure Taoism, and they show the mystical truths of the world's great religions that converge at the point of the soul's awareness of her divine reality. This she finds through her fusion with the One. Not I and thou, or thou and I, but I, the One. Indeed, in order to become what we are, we must return to our point of origin, beingness itself, the I am that I am. This is accomplished through a path of daily self-transcendence. Lao Tzu said, if heaven were not by means of the Tao clear, it would, I'm afraid, shatter. I think that heaven must be daily cleared by the Tao, not just once. If the earth were not by means of the Tao stable, it would, I'm afraid, let go. Earth must be stabilized daily by the Tao, but by what Tao? The Tao we have self-realized and become. Thereby we become the stabilizing force. Earth is very unstable today. We live on a diseased planet, a planet that is off course, out of alignment, does not have equilibrium. Therefore, the bodies of those who share the earth body are diseased in so many ways. Why are we unbalanced? Because of returning karma, untransmuted. Why do we have such karma? Because we have not learned the concept of meekness and lowliness, of self-effacing so that the Tao would enter into us. How do we become one with the Tao? Jesus taught us that. He said, if you keep the commandments of the Father and the Son, then the Father and the Son will take up their abode in you. If you are obedient to the law of love, then you are clearing this chalice, this temple, and therefore you prepare the place for the Father and the Son to descend. This is a principle of things equal to the same thing, being equal to each other. If we make ourselves equal in manifestation to the law of love, of the great Tao, and the one who is born of the Tao, the Son, then we can no longer be separated from it. We will be in polarity to it. We the minus, and they the plus. And so there is an instantaneous oneness. People have not been willing to be self-emptied to be filled. That is why the earth is out of kilter. That is why the axis is tipped, so to speak. When we think that each one of us can express the oneness of the Tao, and that it does not have to do with numbers, but with state of consciousness, even as one who attained to that Christ, even Jesus, was able to so affect the course of civilization. So the Tao where we are and our total identification with it can accomplish the same. For are we not all also sons and daughters of the Tao? If the gods were not by means of the Tao divine, they would, I'm afraid, be powerless. The gods must renew their divinity daily, else they will lose their power. If valleys were not by means of the Tao full, they would, I'm afraid, dry up. The valleys of the world are drying up. The rains and the precipitation are changing. The climate is changing. All of these inequities that we see. We seem helpless before nature itself, but we are not helpless. Nature is the outpicturing of our state of consciousness and our abuse of the environment. And so if we gain that harmony with the Tao, we shall be one also with nature and the laws of nature, and we will see the restoration of equilibrium. And if marquises and kings were not by means of the Tao noble and high, they would, I'm afraid, topple and fall. This theme, the Father, the Tao, that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works, is expressed by mystics of all faiths. This concept transcends all narrowness of doctrine and dogma. Everyone who has communed with God knows this truth, and everyone who knows this truth is one in consciousness with all others who know it. Paul wrote to the Corinthians, "For I am the least of the apostles, that am not meet to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God. But by the grace of God, I am what I am. And his grace which was bestowed upon me was not in vain, but I labored more abundantly than they all. Yet not I, but the grace of God which was with me. Not I, but the dir of the Tao which was with me." Paul received that same impartation of universal laws that Jesus had. That grace is the action of God, just as virtue, the dir, is the action of the Tao. Paul continues, "Not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think anything as of ourselves, but our sufficiency is of God." To say our sufficiency is of God is to say our allness is of God. We are not anything. The Tao is the all. When we are self-emptied, the Tao can be fully in us. And when we are in the Tao and the Tao is in us, then we become the dir, the activation of the Tao. Paul went on to make the point that his very weakness, including his physical infirmities, is what allowed the strength of God to work through him. He wrote, "Of myself I will not glory in mine infirmities, for though I would desire to glory, I shall not be a fool, for I will say the truth. But now I forbear, lest any man should think of me above that which he seeth me to be, or that he heareth of me. And lest I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan, to buffet me." Paul speaks of this as ongoing in his mission, a thorn in the flesh as the messenger of Satan to buffet me, to keep me humble, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. My personal experience on the path of mysticism is that when I am empty, then I am full. When I am nothing, then I am the all, and I can experience the all. Only in my nothingness can I experience that all. The commentary of Reverend James Reed from the Interpreter's Bible brings home Paul's message. Reverend Reed writes, Was Paul afraid that this infirmity would hinder his effectiveness, be a barrier between him and those to whom he ministered, or prove too big a drain on his resources of courage and cheerfulness? God's grace would be sufficient for all these situations. Whatever demands life might lay on him because of this defect, God could and did make him adequate to them. There are divine compensations for every handicap in life. There are spiritual resources that can enable a man to triumph over his defect and even to win something out of it, which was not possible before. The point of Paul's weakness could become the place of God's power. It could become a center through which that power could most fully radiate. These are the words of Emerson. As no man had ever a point of pride that was not injurious to him, so no man had ever a defect that was not somewhere made useful to him. The story of handicapped lives is a continuous illustration of this paradox. Many of those who have done outstanding work for their country or for their fellows have had to contend with some physical defect. Moses had a stammering tongue. Jeremiah was overwhelmed with a sense of his own deficiencies. Modern examples are almost too numerous to mention. Again and again, through faith in God, the defect has been transformed into a stimulus. The struggle to overcome it has developed capacities that would otherwise have lain dormant. This is part of the explanation, but there is more. The weakness or defect can bring people into the condition in which they are open to God's Spirit. We come to God through the sense of need. The feeling of inadequacy turns into prayer. Self-confidence is a good quality, provided it is based not on self-sufficiency, but on a deep dependence on God. We come to that dependence only when self-sufficiency has been broken by some situation or experience that is too much for us. When self in its various forms is laid in the dust, God can fully come in. God refuses to remove our weakness because he needs it. I say he needs it as his lever to bring us back to him. If we were self-sufficient, we wouldn't need God, and we might never get back to our heavenly home. Reed also writes, the power of the Spirit is the power that comes from the indwelling Christ. That is the indwelling Tao, in other words, the Der. The nature of Christ is virtue. Christ is self-defined in all of these passages that I have brought to you. By his self-proclaimed virtues, lowliness, meekness, humility, and being a servant of the great Tao that also resides in his disciples, and in every creature of God. Yet Jesus does not wear his virtue as a many-colored coat. He is suffused with virtue. Jesus proclaimed these virtues because he was a teacher, not because he was vaunting himself. He was a teacher, and he must speak plainly and concretely to those who must take on his yoke and his burden of the Tao. Therefore he says, I and my Father are one being, no longer cause and effect, or yang and yin, but simply the divine whole, the Tao. Reed continues, weakness may deepen this indwelling by throwing us more completely on God, and by providing the condition in which the qualities of the Christ-like spirit may be developed. God's way of answering the prayer for these qualities may be to lead us into the circumstances, or to bring us face to face with a difficulty that calls them out. This is the yin precipitating the yang, and the yang precipitating the yin. We pray for courage, and God leads us by roads that expose us to danger. We pray for patience, and we get a disagreeable neighbor. We pray for love, and life throws on us the need to care for someone who may be irksome and difficult. We pray for humility, and life brings us into circumstances that break our pride. These things can be accepted in meekness if we have the Christian valuation, confident that real strength is in the quality of Christ-likeness, and if this is what we want more than anything else. Having this outlook and this desire, Paul made friends with his thorn in the flesh. Paul had found the only effective way to overcome the sense of inferiority, to accept the fact that we are nothing, whatever our gifts or lack of them, but that through our nothingness, God's power may be made manifest. Jesus also taught Catherine of Siena the principle of emptying herself so that she could be filled with the Spirit of God, the Spirit of the Tao. This fundamental truth gave this unschooled but devout woman the strength to confront the forces threatening the church in the turbulent 14th century. Acting as a peacemaker and unofficial diplomat, Catherine traveled widely and addressed hundreds of letters to the prelates and sovereigns of her day. Jesus once appeared to Catherine of Siena as she was praying and said, "Do you know, daughter, who you are and who I am? If you knew these two things, you would be blessed. You are that which is not. I am that which is. If you have this knowledge in your soul, the enemy can never deceive you. You will escape all his snares. You will never consent to anything contrary to my commandments, and without difficulty, you will acquire every grace, every truth, every light." Biographer Igino Giordani records that with that lesson, Catherine became fundamentally learned. She was founded upon a rock. There were no more shadows. I nothing, God all. I non-being, God being. This is another Taoist mantra from the lips of Jesus. Let it go from our lips now. I nothing, God all. I non-being, God being. What this really means is where I am nothing, and therefore where I am, God is all. Where I am non-being, therefore where I am, God is being. Nothing and non-being are vacuums. If we see ourselves as nothing and non-being, then instantaneously where we stand is God the All and God our true being. When you are nothing, when you are poor in spirit, when you are meek and lowly, then God can be everything in you and do everything through you. As the Hindu leader Swami Shivananda wrote, surrender everything unto God. Place your ego at his feet and be at ease. He will take complete charge of you. Let him mold you in any way he likes. Let him do exactly as he wills. He will remove all defects and weaknesses. He will play beautifully on this body flute. Hear this marvelous music of his flute, the mysterious music of the soul, and rejoice. The writings of the 12th century Persian poet Sana'i echo this theme. He said in his work, The Enclosed Garden of Truth, if you ask me, O my brother, which are the signs of the path, I would answer you very clearly and without ambiguity. The path is to look at the truth and break with the falsity. It is to turn your face to the living universe, to despise the earthly dignities, to free your mind from any ambition of glory and fame, to stoop to his service, to purify your soul from evil and strengthen it with reason, to leave the house of those who talk too much and to go to the one where people are silent, and to travel from God's manifestations to God's attributes, and from there to his knowledge. Then at that moment you will have crossed the world of mysteries and arrived at the door of poverty. When you are poverty's friend, your deep soul will have become a penitent heart. Then God will extract poverty from your heart, and when poverty is gone from there, God will stay in your heart. Jalaluddin, the 13th century Sufi poet, Jalaluddin Rumi, one of the great mystics of Islam, shared this vision. He wrote, take the famous utterance, I am God. Some men reckon it as a great pretension, but I am God is in fact a statement of great humility. The man who says, I am a servant of God, says that two exist, one himself and the other God. But he who says, I am God, has knotted or effaced himself and cast himself to the winds. He says, I am God, that is, I am not, he is all. Nothing has existence but God. I am pure non-entity. I am nothing. In this, the humility is greater. If you say God is where I am, and in truth he is, then you must also say, therefore, I am not. God is all where I am. And your life, your creativity, your victory will come out of that deep understanding. It is a mystical understanding. You cannot go out into the streets of the world and proclaim as a madman, I am God, for they will lock you up. And so you say in your heart, where I am, there is God, and I am that I am. Therefore, by that very living flame, encountered by Moses in the burning bush, the not-self is consumed, and you discover your true self to be that divine reality. As Lao Tzu said, therefore it must be the case that the noble has the base as its root, and it must be the case that the high has the low as its foundation.